Greetings, Commanders. My name is Beck, and I am the Community Manager for Star Trek Fleet Command. And today we are doing a little bit different of an episode of the Captain's Log. I have joining with me Clay, who's been here before, so welcome back to the Captain's Log. But for those who may not know you or didn't see your episode, just give us a brief recap on who you are and what you do here.
Absolutely. My name's Clay. I'm a Senior Product Manager on Fleet Command. Been here coming up on 3 years now, purely working on the performance side, overseeing a number of different projects and initiatives that we have going on behind the scenes.
Yes, and that's a much smaller way of saying everything that you do, because your job is massive, and we appreciate you even taking the time to do this, because I did mention today's episode is a little bit different, and I am super glad that you agreed to do it. Because today I actually want to maybe tackle what would be considered some unique topics for today's episode. Usually we come on here and we interview someone, and you've been here before. Instead, I'm putting you in the hot seat a little bit, if you're okay with it.
Yeah, by all means.
In order to start, we're going to start with a tougher one. I actually wanted to talk a little bit about game performance. We get a lot of questions about the game, about lag, server stability, all the fun stuff, right? And I was curious if you wouldn't mind speaking into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Game performance is something that is top of mind for the community. And lag in particular can be a source of real frustration, particularly during competitive events like infinite incursions or even weekly territory captures.
Right.
So it's something that we too have top of our mind.
So just out of curiosity, is there a reason why it happens?
What I can say is that lag can be caused by any number of different things, and these range in scope from the relatively minor to the much larger. And what this means then is that it's not simply an one thing that we can fix, that we can quickly get out there, and that we can solve. And so it's complex, involves a lot of different code paths, both in terms of the game client, the actual application on the player's end, as well as our own servers. So there's a lot there that can be a source of issues that result in lag for the player.
Yeah. So in regards to that, do we have any specified things or teams or initiatives to help with lag? Or have we been doing things? What are we working on? Any of that you can share with us today?
Yeah, I could share a little bit for sure. We do have dedicated teams of engineers that are working on lag and game performance as a whole. For this year, for example, we rolled out some improvements to battle logs, and we've also done some adjustments to server scaling, which helps us better handle peak concurrent players during event reset and things like that. We also have a number of different projects that are in progress, as well as some that are on our roadmap. One in particular that I'm very excited about is not necessarily player facing, but it'll still have a big impact. And this is enhancements to the way that we can monitor real-time data from the players, which is ultimately going to give us a lot more insight into the specific things that they're encountering, which will help us better respond in the future.
Wow. I'm also personally now looking forward to it. I know you said it's not exactly player facing, but just hearing that there are things going on and continually going on in order to address those things. Thank you for speaking on it, because I know that can sometimes be a little bit of a touchy subject. I never know how to answer those questions, so it's nice to have someone actually come here to share and me not fumble my way through it. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we are very conscious of, not only thinking from the player's perspective, but also our own and how we want to manage this game and this experience for people. And so it's something that we absolutely always have top of mind.
Speaking of top of mind, I hope you don't mind. I kind of want to skirt that one to the side a little bit. Top of mind, we're getting ready to start another arc, right? And there's always this fun bubble of conversation that happens around arc launch time. People usually have the questions, how does that work? How does the arc schedule work? I know before this interview, I was even finding out knowledge about what happens behind the scenes that I don't know about. But do you mind speaking into arcs a little bit for us?
Yeah, for sure. So for yourself or anyone that might not know, the way that we currently release content and features in the game is this arc structure. Each month we release a new arc, typically on the first or second Tuesday of that month. And along with that arc, there's going to be new officers, new narratives, new content or features, depending on it. Of course, some new cosmetics, fun things for players to collect. And so that is what we consider an arc in and of itself. Now, these arcs typically will also be based around a certain theme, most likely aligned with some different part of the Star Trek universe. So, for example, what we're about to head into is the final part of our Voyager series here in August. But then in September, we're going to be moving on to something new, something different. So we always use these arcs that are organized into roughly 2 to 4 parts that ultimately make up broader stories in these different corners of the Star Trek universe.
Yeah, and a lot goes into that, right? Especially, you mentioned the arcs launch each month, which means we have an arc runner each month, which is not the same one as the month prior. So when you have those sections of part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, it's always really interesting to see like how they kind of flow into one another, how the arc runners are able to almost hand off the baton for the next month.
Yeah.
It's always kind of fascinated me just going from the player side to coming here and just seeing it work on the back end. So I've always been curious about that. We get a lot of questions about that. I know that we had a brief conversation prior about it, but yeah.
Yeah, and diving into it even a little bit more, what we have going behind the scenes. There are a number of different teams that we have working on any individual arc. So while we might have an arc runner, as you mentioned, there's also all of these different teams that are contributing different parts to what ultimately makes it into that release. And the number of teams that we have working on any individual arc varies greatly depending on whatever the needs of that arc might be. So we may have 3 teams working on one arc, and then the next one it might be 5, just depending on whatever the needs of that release are.
Yeah.
And then right when that arc is done, when those teams have wrapped up their work, then they move on to other arcs. And so it's not the same teams that are delivering every single arc together. It really varies. And so on our side, behind the scenes, a lot of these people get to experience different arcs, different parts that they're building and designing.
I feel like I always see the surface level of everything, and I don't actually see a lot of what goes on in the back end. I know obviously it's a ton of work. It's stuff that doesn't make sense to me personally, but I appreciate it nonetheless as a player and of course as a CM. But I do have to ask another question. We often get the question, why not take a month off? Can I ask you about that? Is that okay to ask here?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a question that we've seen before. And we have worked to address it in different ways at different points in time. So while I mentioned we have a lot of these teams working on a variable number of teams that are working on any given arc, sometimes we organize and structure our work such that we arrange a quote unquote best of month where we don't have as many teams that are working on that specific month, giving us more room to work on either new upcoming content, features, or anything like that. So 2 examples of that would have been April 2021, as well as more recently in May of 2022. And we're always looking to see if more of those make sense. And we very well might schedule more of those in the future to continue to give us more time in order to work on bigger features, different content, and things of that nature.
I do like that you framed it as the best of, right? Like mixing in events and things like that players enjoy while you guys take a month to focus on other new features and things upcoming or whatnot that haven't been released yet. So,
yeah. And I think there's a lot of value in that too from the player's perspective, because what what we're able to do with those months sometimes is comb through a lot of the events and activities that people might have enjoyed, but because of the cadence of what we're releasing and different narrative contexts that we're operating in, we might not be as active in one part of the world as we have been. So then it lets us go back to that, trying to mine from that to pull out fun things that people enjoy.
I love that. Recently, we entered into a partnership with Savvy Games, and that's also been a topic of discussion. I know we just talked about traditionally how we do things. Does this new step that we're taking affect any of that? Does it affect the game at all, and how the game is planned to progress?
Yeah, this is a question that we also had internally. A lot of people on our team also questioned what would the potential impact of this be. So I think we have a lot of sympathy from the player perspective as well. Fortunately, what I can say is that there's been no change to the way that we operate after the acquisition, and thus far, there's no change that we're going to be making in terms of how we operate. Right now, we still have a expansive product roadmap, literally not changed as far as I know in terms of anything since or resulting from the acquisition. And so right now we're full steam ahead with all the plans that we already have before we became aware internally of any of these discussions.
From the player perspective, it's nice to just hear someone say that, because we actually hadn't addressed that in any of our YouTube videos thus far. And so I hope you don't mind. I just kind of threw that one at you.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, then, speaking into that, and you kind of touched on the future things, looking forward a little bit, is there anything that you're particularly excited or looking forward to that's coming up in the realm of Star Trek Fleet Command?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff that we have coming up. I feel really great about the product roadmap across the back half of this year and even into 2024. Now, I can't share too many specifics right now.
Right.
You get it. But what I can say is there are two things in particular that I find really exciting. One of them is going to be a new ship that will be coming out in the future that I think will genuinely feel exciting to play. I'm really, really looking forward to that one. And then the other thing is a new cooperative activity that we're going to be introducing into the game. Okay. So for that one, for me personally, I think the social elements in Star Trek and the community, both in the game, outside of the game, is one of the most exciting things. And I think it keeps a lot of people continuing to play and continuing to engage. And so the more that we can lean into that, in my perspective, the better. And so I think this feature is really going to live up to that goal for myself and many others on the product to help make a fun, engaging, cooperative experience. So yeah, I can't wait till some more information comes out.
Okay.
But I can say to that end that we will be getting out a product roadmap update. I know it's been a little while, but they're working on another one that we can release in the coming months. So stay tuned.
I'm excited for that. I love roadmaps. I love updates. And I'm now extra curious because I don't get to see the same plans as you do, which is probably great because I would probably spill the beans. But no, I'm looking forward to it, especially intrigued by this co-op discussion a little bit here. So thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, it's been a real pleasure to just pick your brain a little bit. I actually kind of want to play a little game if you're okay with it. Got to get the Clay permission. But this game is actually for the community. So community, I would love it if you guys would leave in the comments below your guesses about what this new ship is, and what you think is coming to Star Trek Fleet Command that Clay is particularly excited for. So Clay, thank you again for being on this episode of the Captain's Log. Community, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Captain's Log. We'll see you next time. Live long and prosper.